Board of Supervisors to order, please. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing because following the Pledge of Allegiance will be a silent moment of reflection. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And we'll have the reading of the notice, please.
An educational meeting of the Marathon County Board of Supervisors will be held at the Marathon County Courthouse Assembly Room, 500 Forest Street, Wausau, at 7 p.m., and the agenda was duly signed and posted.
Thank you, and I would like to request everyone in attendance tonight to please put any electronic devices and or cell phones on silent as to not to interrupt the meeting, and I thank you for your compliance. And we will proceed to roll call, and I'd ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Arstead. Here. Beestrom. Here. Bizotto. Boots.
Here.
Book. Here. Butke.
Here.
Christensen. Here. Seiler.
Present.
Conway. Here. Drabeck.
Here.
Pfeifrick.
Here.
Fisher.
Here.
Gaber.
Here.
Gibbs.
Here.
Gonering. Guild.
Here.
Gums.
Here.
Harris. Jacobson.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Krause.
Here.
Lamont.
Here.
Leahy.
Here.
Lowe.
Here.
Mask.
Here.
McEwen.
Here.
Oberbeck.
Here.
Robinson.
Here.
Rosenberg.
Here.
Seafelt.
Here.
Soibert. Van Cray.
Here.
Vol.
Here.
Zhang.
Here.
Bizotto. Gonering. Harris. Supervisors Gonering and Harris, I can see you on the WebEx, so I will mark you as present. Thank you.
Thank you, and I would like to welcome all of the visitors that we have here with us this evening, and including the viewing audience. And we will move on to item number 7, public comment. And we do have 2 individuals who have signed up to give us public comment. We have Mr. Jeff Todd, and his address is 152547 Oriole Lane, Wausau, Wisconsin. Jeff, if you would, please.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the Marathon County Board, distinguished staff, and guests, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to address the board this evening. My name is Jeff Todd. I live at 152547 Oriole Lane in Rib Mountain. I retired a few years ago after a 43-year career in healthcare, having been at various times in my career a mental health counselor, a local public health officer, an adjunct assistant professor, a certified medical practice executive with Aspirus, and a state agency quality assurance administrator, among other roles. I currently serve as a senior public health policy fellow with the Wisconsin Institute for Public Policy and Service, And I also serve as the volunteer clinic manager at the First Presbyterian Wausau Free Clinic. I wish to offer very brief comments in support of the resolution authorizing the county administrator to negotiate lease space within the Community Partners campus. I understand that action is on the docket perhaps tonight. I commend the committee for offering up this resolution and strongly encourage the board to approve it. The First Presbyterian Wausau Free Clinic has been all in on the Community Partners campus since the very beginning several years ago. And we will be among the 8 or so charter tenants in the facility. We've already signed our lease. It would be incredibly helpful to the agencies that will be in this center, their clients and residents of Marathon County in general, to have North Central Healthcare and its program staff who are involved in various essential services such as CART, mental health, substance abuse, and related services to have a visible and accessible presence in the CPC campus. As I am sure you all know, providing social and health services which are coordinated, which are accessible, which are effective, and which are culturally appropriate within a safe and trusted environment is really key to success. And we all want success. Having select North Central Healthcare Services on the CPC campus and literally across the hall from the free clinic, from Catholic Charities, from the Community Action Program, from the Neighbor's Place will have enormous benefits and will offer social dividends, I believe, for years to come. The coordination alone is going to be phenomenal. So I urge this board to support this resolution as presented, and would like to thank you for this opportunity to offer these comments, and would make myself available to answer any questions that might arise. Thank you.
Thank you. And we also have with us Kevin Noel. Kevin, if you would, please.
Hi, my name is Kevin Noel. I'm a co-founder of Community Partners Campus. So I've been working on this project for almost 4 years, and I've gone through several real estate deals, and I finally ended up with a home for Community Partners Campus. And I've learned more about the Wisconsin DNR and geotechnical services and government and zoning and real estate than I ever want to know. But it's really been fun and educational getting there. So anyway, the last time I addressed the Marathon County Board of Supervisors, I think we were just getting underway with our fundraising. And I think at the time I had maybe $350,000 or $400,000. Well, as of today, I have $5.6 million. So that's all contributions from our community. And it's really, it takes my breath away to have all of that support behind our effort to provide services for the vulnerable in a single location. So we do have COVID headwinds. We've been informed that Myron Construction is our general contractor. And since our initial budget, everybody's heard that lumber has gone up. Well, so has steel, and so has paint, and so has carpeting, and so has everything else that we need. So we're going to need another $1 million. So we're embarking on that road, and we're sure that we're going to be successful in collecting those funds as well. So that's the update on where I've been, where I am, and now where I'm going. Architectural plans are going to be finished next week, and they go out for bids to all the subcontractors, and everybody will form a team to begin construction in April. We purchased the building, which is about 2 blocks south of here. It's the job service building, and its current footprint is 17,000 square feet. And we're going to build an addition for the Neighbor's Place Food Bank that will look like this. It's a 3-story, 8,000 square foot footprint. We're stacking food as high as it'll go because of the small footprint that we're working with. And we think it's a pretty nice design for Wausau and Grand Avenue. Grand Avenue hasn't seen something like this happen in a very long time. So we're very proud of it. The community will be proud of it. The volunteers who work here and the clients of the nonprofit partners will be proud of it. It'll be a very welcoming atmosphere. Our CPC business model. So this $6 million that we're spending on construction, none of that gets charged back to the partners. That's a gift from the community for these nonprofit partners. The only expenses that we're charging for are operational expenses such as utilities, and the other factor will be an executive director. Our executive director is Carrie Logeman. Carrie Logeman retired as general counsel of Aspirus Clinic, or Aspirus Hospitals, and prior to that she was an attorney with the Reuter Law Firm. So we're very excited to have Carrie's expertise helping guide the way for Community Partners Campus. With that, typical commercial lease rates are around $10 a square foot. Community Partners Campus ended up at $7.80 a square foot. So we're somewhere between 20 and 30% less in our rental rate for these nonprofit partners than the going rate for a facility that they may rent now that doesn't really work for their mission. Our architect and our general contractor, and I just want to plug Myron. Myron has worked with us for a year and a half at no charge, doing all the pre-construction work with us and meeting with our nonprofit partners to make sure that these spaces are designed to meet their needs. So if you didn't know, the partners are the Neighbor's Place, the food bank, the food pantry, and a new mission of theirs is the Baby's Place. They've been finding families reusing diapers as they can't afford to buy new diapers. So the Baby's Place will be a diaper bank where diapers will be available free of charge. They'll also offer feminine hygiene products. And you heard Jeff Todd talk about the very first free clinic that we're establishing in Wausau for underinsured and uninsured individuals in the community. They'll offer adult and pediatric services. This will be staffed by volunteer doctors from Aspirus, Marshfield Clinic, and Ascension Health. They'll work in collaboration with the Medical College of Wisconsin to provide students curriculum to work shoulder to shoulder in a clinical atmosphere with these doctors and nurses. So it's going to be pretty exciting for everybody in the community. And I know a lot of doctors, and these guys are all chomping at the bit to do this. North Central Community Action Program provides housing assistance as well as other services to those in our community. Catholic Charities Warming Center, Blessings in a Backpack, packs 1,900 bags of food for elementary school children to eat on the weekends. They'll be there, along with their 30 or 40 volunteers every week to pack these bags. The Wausau Police Department Victim Resources Unit to provide a neutral place to counsel with victims of crimes. In addition to these services, just across the parking lot to our south is the Wausau Community Development Authority. They work also with low-income and housing assistance, and it's just going to be great to have them across the parking lot. Yeah, I don't know if this is a touchy subject, but we'll be sorry to see social services leave the neighborhood because that would have been a real good source for us. So we're excited to be at the threshold of construction after all this time. And our nonprofits and the citizens who will use these services are also very excited to be able to find all of these services in a single location will eliminate so many transportation barriers for so many people. So it's my hope that you find Community Partners Campus a worthy investment and a worthy cause to which to invest Arpa funds and allow North Central Healthcare to work more directly to serve individuals and families in need while also supporting our nonprofit partners. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And seeing we had no other individuals sign up for public comment, we will move on to item number 8, education presentation and reports. And we'll start with item 8A, standing committee chairpersons or designees. Supervisor Robinson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to just point out that the HR Finance and Property Committee will be making a presentation on Tuesday relative to Arpa in advance of our voting on the various requests today. And I'd also, as the chair of the broadband task force, like to alert the members of the county board and the public of an upcoming opportunity to provide input on broadband speeds. The statewide, the economic development authorities such as Synergy have contracted with Geo Partners to do a speed test and collect information relative to broadband speeds. This is critically important for us to collect that information so that we know where there are service gaps. We have a broadband task force meeting on Monday. We will be talking about how we will roll that survey out to the public. But we encourage all of you to, once it's rolled out, encourage your constituents and yourself to complete the speed test. As part of the final rule on ARPA, the speeds, the federal government used to use 10.1 and then it was 25.3 download, upload speeds. They're now at 100. 100 is a desirable goal, but they're funding at 100 down and 20 up. So it creates an opportunity for us to future-proof, if you will, our services in the county, but we need, if we're going to be competitive for grants, we need the information of where there are gaps because the current FCC and PSC maps are all wrong. If one person in a census tract has service, everybody in that census tract supposedly has service, and we can overcome that by this information. So please, as we roll that out, encourage your neighbors, constituents, and others to take the speed test so we have that information. They'll be able to geolocate that information and put it on a map.
Okay, any other chairpersons or designees? From the executive committee met last week. We have, and I draw your attention, each of the supervisors, to review the packet that the executive committee had, because included in that packet would be a completed and reviewed work plan for 2021 for the administrator. Also included in that packet is the 2022 tentative work plan. And I invite you to review that, because in the 2021 work plan, it'll show some projects completed, some projects have had progress, some projects have not. And there's explanations, quite in-depth explanations by the administrator as to where those projects sit. Some of those projects that were not completed are carryover to the 2022 tentative work plan. And the reason I bring that up is because by next Tuesday, there will be, out of board rules, the board rules require that the executive committee send to the full board a review and evaluation of the administrator's work for and in correlation with the work plan. And so we will be sending out, I will be sending out several questions that I would respectfully request that each of your supervisors consider in relationship to the administrator's work plan and the evaluation. And again, look at the 2021 work plan and the completion and the explanations that he has there, and also the 2022 plan. I would like to have those back by February 10th, because every odd year, the full board provides input to the administrator's evaluation. The other year, the opposite year of the cycle, is done by the executive committee. So last year, the executive committee did the eval. The board rules require an input from all of the supervisors, and so that questionnaire is going to be going out by next Tuesday, and I would like to have those back to me and/or Corp Counsel for tabulation by February 10th. The administrator also has extended, if anybody has questions on any of the work plan projects or work plan progress, by all means, he'll be here after the meeting to discuss that, or reach out to him and he would be glad to discuss those. One other announcement, CCIT was working beforehand at 6 o'clock this evening on the multi-factor authentication. They will also be here next Tuesday for anybody that has not completed the multi-factor authentication changeover. They'll also be presenting a little bit later, the progress on that multi-factor authentication and the reasons why we're going to that. But they will be here again starting at 6 p.m., understanding that there has been a switchover, and that switchover took place earlier this evening. And so if you don't arrange for and get your multi-factor authentication on your iPad or your electronic device, you will not have access to your email. And so I encourage everyone that hasn't had that done to reach out to CCIT and/or be here by 6 p.m. Next Tuesday, and the staff will be here to assist you in getting that changed over. Any other chairpersons or designees? All right, we'll get to that. The next item on the agenda is the WASA campus and UWSP update and vision by Chancellor Tom Gibson. Unfortunately, the Chancellor had to be excused this evening. He had an illness, and so he is being rescheduled. He asked me to apologize to the board, but we've rescheduled him to come and present to the board next February on the 17th. So he will be here, and that item has been pulled. And now we get to education presentations, multi-factor authentication, and we have CCIT, the director, Jerry Klein. Jerry, if you would, please.
I went over to the other room and I thought you were already on that subject.
Not yet.
Thanks, Kurt. Okay, so my first question is for all the people in the room, is there anybody that's not getting mail right now? Is everybody in your setup that, like Kelly, your laptop, your iPad's still getting set up in there, and yours is at our office? Nobody else? That's a win. Okay, and tomorrow morning and schedule a time if you can come to City Hall and get it done ahead of time, that would be best, because you won't get mail until this is done. If you really don't care about mailing, you can wait till Tuesday night. But our preference is that you call the help desk, 715-261-6710, and then schedule a time and stop by. We're on the 3rd floor, City Hall. It'll take about 10 minutes probably. There's Paul. I think Kurt probably already gave you a little background. This is a security improvement that we're required to do. It's been mandated by insurance. What it's doing is it's giving you an additional form of authentication. So that's the term multi-factor. So it's something, your username, your password, and then something you have, which is the authentication tool. So we're using what's called a soft authenticator. It's the app on your iPad called Microsoft Authenticator. So it shouldn't ask you for this very often, but if it does, it'll prompt you and say you need to put in your code from Microsoft Authenticator. On an iPad, it should be a bar across the top, and it'll just like a notification of an email coming in. It'd be a notification. When you open mail up, it'll be on the top, and it'll say Authenticator. Click on it. It'll give you a 2-digit code. I think many of you saw that tonight. And then you'll put that in on your mail screen. So it'll be 65 or 32 or something like that, and you put it in, and you should go on. If you change networks, it'll probably ask you for this. Otherwise, it's not going to ask you for it very often. So if all you do is ever check mail from your home Wi-Fi connection, you'll probably do it once when you get home tonight. You may not even do that, depending on how close you live to us, because it kind of looks at zip codes. It looks at how close you are to where this IP address came from. So it's possible when you get home tonight and you open up mail on your iPad, it might ask for it. If you try it tomorrow, then it shouldn't ask you for it again. If you go traveling to a hotel, fly to somewhere, go out of state, out of town, it'll probably ask you for it each time you open up mail. And then it'll be fine until the next time you switch to another network. Do you have any questions about it? So that's the main thing. It's going to pop up and ask you for that code. Nope. Okay, so again, this is a security improvement. So if someone knows your username and password, they still won't be able to get in and log in and do mail as you. I want to be clear, though, this doesn't necessarily solve all of our security problems. We still have ransomware. So it's important that all of you, if you get an email from someone that has an attachment that you don't recognize, that looks weird, or a link to a website, you still have to be cognizant of the fact that people are still trying to get information from you and put viruses on our computers. With the iPads, there's a little less risk of that than than the laptops that we use, but it's still something to be aware of. So still don't open emails from people that look like they're fraud. If you open it up and it's asking you to click on a link and go to a website, don't do that. So that's the other piece. We still have work to do on continuing to protect ourselves from that risk. And that's all I have. Do you have any questions for me?
Any questions for Jerry and the multi-factor authentication and the security upgrades that we're making to the CCIT systems?
Okay, thanks. I'll be in the back.
Thank you, Jerry. Okay, moving on. We will move on to review and discussion of Tuesday's meeting agenda items. On Tuesday, we will have two memorials, one for the life and public service of James Seafelt, and then also the life and public service of Maynard Tremelling. And so we will move on to 9B, appointments. We have 9B1, the 2022 Emergency Fire Wardens. Any questions or comments? Yeah, item 9B2, Central Wisconsin Economic Development Board, CWED, appointment.
Appointing Kim Weber of McDevco to serve as Marathon County's designee to the Central Wisconsin Economic Development Board.
Questions by the board? Okay, next we have item 9B3, the Board of Health appointment.
Reappointing Koo Her of Weston and Tiffany Lee of Wausau to the Board of Health for 5-year terms to expire December 31st, 2026. And also a new appointment, Helen Lucy, Woodsmoke Road, Wausau, to the Board of Health to fill a vacant term that expires December 31st, 2022.
Questions on those appointments? Okay, we will move on to item 9C, ordinances. Town of Plover rezone, James Gardner on behalf of Dean Krubsack. Ordinance 01-22. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item 9C2 from the Town of Gunther rezone. Tim Vreeland on behalf of Dale Taylor. Ordinance 0-02-22. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, we move on to ordinance amending the General Code of Ordinances for Marathon County, Chapter 11.02, Animal Waste Management Ordinance Code, Ordinance 0-03-22, and we have with us on the WebEx, we have Mr. Paul Daigle, and he did have in the presentation, and we also have with us the director from the CPZ, Miss Lori Misgivens, and so any questions, but we also have, I think, Paul, did you have a presentation?
Yes, I did have one.
Okay, thank you.
Are you ready for me to share it?
You betcha, go ahead.
All right.
It's coming up now, Paul, thank you.
All right. Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Chair Gibbs. Tonight, I'd like to just share with you some modification we're recommending to the board in regards to our animal waste management ordinance, and just want to walk you through the changes and why you're seeing this. We were here about 2 years ago with similar changes, but because of us not competing well for a grant and how we were advised to write the ordinance from local DNR staff, and it conflicted when it got down to the state level for some statewide grants. We're recommending changes to our ordinance to really be more competitive. As you know, we have an ordinance in place. The purpose is to regulate basically construction of any animal waste storage facility to prevent the degradation of surface and groundwater and protect those resources, and provide for the administration and enforcement of the ordinance and provide penalties for any violations. These ordinance revisions coincide with the objectives 5.2 and 6.3 of Marathon County's strategic plan. It's also consistent with a newly passed land and water resource management plan, which references as one of the main objectives is to have an R151 agricultural performance standards and prohibitions in place within Marathon County on farms. This update really was started in August with engaging the Environmental Resources Committee, and we certainly went through the minimum steps, which was a public hearing notice at the last Environmental Resources Committee meeting, and then today's hearing at the county board. We had offers. We sent out to attend local farm group meetings starting in October, and we sent a mailing to all the towns in the county, as well as over 900 landowners and farmers in the counties. We went out and had 2 public information meetings, one at the Stratford Library and one at the 210 River Drive, Wausau, at the CPZ office. In addition, we were invited to a meeting at Nutterville and met with farmers from the east side of Marathon County. We also had quite a few individual phone meetings and meetings with farmers in person to discuss the changes. There was some local media coverage, and we also, like I said, we had meetings with farmers and farm groups in December. And the reasons for the revisions are really clarification of terminology. There's some definition changes that they're all following state code. And currently the most state performance standards and prohibitions are included in the ordinance. The way we wrote it 2 years ago, it would be very concise and clear. And but we're recommending these changes to compete for grants, and the state's recommending we need to pull out each NR 151 performance standards and identify them individually to earn those points and bring more money into Marathon County to directly put conservation on the ground on farms in the county. I'll just show this example from the last one. We wrote a grant for the Fenwood Watershed Project, and this is right from the email I received from the Wisconsin DNR last spring, and our Fenwood project received 156 points for a $411,000 grant that we submitted, and we left basically 20 points on the table, and we would have scored 176 points, thereby outgaming me and for that grant. And it came directly under the enforcement section of the scoring for the funds. Basically, I want to share with you that what we're proposing is nothing new. Our existing definition of animal waste identifies manure, leachate from things such as through animal feed or waste storage sites in part of the definition, and processed wastewater. And you'll see in the suggested changes, these are all broken out and written out separately. In addition, the existing definition of direct runoff includes runoff from stored animal waste and runoff from animal lots. Those are also broken out and defined individually in the proposed ordinance. So what you'll see in here is state performance standards, including unconfined animal waste piles. The new language is included. And again, these are included in the current ordinance that I just showed you, the language. Those are broken out individually now. State performance standards and prohibitions for barnyards. The language is already included, but now it's broken out as a separate item. In addition, the state performance standards includes wastewater and silage leachate. The language is included in the ordinance, but now it's broken out as a separate ordinance. We did receive quite a few comments on this because folks out in the country thought this was a new prohibition, but like I showed you, it was already included in there. But here's an example of a very well-managed bag storage site for feed for dairy livestock. It's a good selection. It's not near a well or adjacent to a road ditch. We don't see any dead vegetation below the bags from leachate. There's no large piles of refusal waste silage that can have runoff. And there's a sufficient buffer below areas for downstream. Areas like this, which do exist in Marathon County, would be regulated and are regulated. This is not a well-managed bunker silo. The runoff goes directly to a road ditch. There's a leachate and runoff, and the sediment enters a road ditch. You can see burned and dead vegetation from the leachate. And there's large piles of refusal waste silage that also have runoff. And again, there's no buffer downstream from the storage area. Just as a reminder, these revisions, there's nothing in here, nor can they be stricter than current state law allows us to include, to have a desire to have local control. In most cases, for pre-existing farms, we have to have an offer of cost sharing to correct problem if it's required. So again, it includes the new definitions out of the Natural Resources Code 151. The definitions are for accounting period, what is a crop producer, what is a phosphorus index, surface waters, tolerable soil loss, and water quality management areas. So again, we're separating and identifying and clarifying state performance standards and prohibitions. All the things identified in the first bullet are already included in there. The only thing new, and that was not in our old ordinance, is a 5-foot tillage setback from the streams. The conservation staff at CPZ, along with farmers, agreed that we really didn't need to have that in there because we really are unaware of any site in Marathon County where you can even get that close to a stream until we either have rock or wetlands or trees along these, most of our streams. So the reasons for the revisions are clarification of terminology, and again, those pulling those state performance standards out and identify them individually, and to earn those points to bring in more money to Marathon County. So with that, I will turn it back to Chair Gibbs, and if there's any questions, we would be happy to entertain them.
Well, thank you, Paul. And so I open it up to the board. Is there any questions on the proposed amending of the General Code of Ordinances for Marathon County, Chapter 11.02 of the Animal Waste Management Ordinance? I think you did a great presentation, Paul, and thank you for that. Any questions by the board? No, I don't see any, Paul, so thank you. So thank you very much for that presentation. It satisfied everybody's curiosity. So we will move on
You're welcome.
to
Thank you.
we will move on to resolutions. Item 9D and 9D1, County Board of Supervisors changing in supervisory district boundaries resulting from City of Wausau annexation. Resolution 01-22. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to item 9D2, Human Resources, Finance, and Property Committee. Item 9D2A, approval of the 2021 budget transfers for Marathon County Department of Appropriations. Resolution 02-22. This does require a 2/3 majority vote on Tuesday. Any questions on that, the budget transfers? Likewise, item 9D2B, approve the 2022 budget transfers for Marathon County Department of Appropriations. Resolution 3-22, that as well does require a 2/3 majority. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to item 9D2C, restructuring the zoning and regulatory program staffing for Conservation Planning and Zoning, CPZ Department. Any questions? We have with us the department head, Lori Misgivens, if there's any questions. Again, this was reviewed by the HR Finance Committee and approved unanimously. Okay. Thank you. We'll move on to item 9D, 2D, authorizing Arpa expenditure for PTO balance liability reduction, resolution 05-22. I would invite the administrator to give a brief overview.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and you should have in your packet the information set forth for the request, and this is actually, it dovetails nicely with the presentation you'll be seeing next week from Chair Robinson relative to the discussions at the HR Finance and Property Committee relative to the process through which ARPA project requests will proceed, as well as the form that the HR Finance and Property Committee approved for usage. There were a couple modifications to that form that were made at the last meeting that were not incorporated because this was completed earlier, but I'll be very brief as set forth in the document, and there's a fair amount of information within it. Quite simply, one of those unforeseen, one of the many unforeseen outcomes from the pandemic has been the significant increase in our paid time off liability balances based on for the reasons set forth in the document. This proposal calls for or seeks the authorization from the board for the utilization of some of those funds to essentially reduce that balance. In my mind, there are two significant liabilities. One, our ability to continue to deliver services to the people of Marathon County. Our liability balances rose by from pre-pandemic levels by 25,600 hours. If you, and those increased caps that we have for those liability balances are set to be reduced to pre-pandemic levels on May 1st of this year. So if we do have a significant number of staff that are asked to reduce their balances or seek to get below those limits, 25,600 hours equates to over 12 FTE, full-time equivalent positions. So there's a significant impact on our ability to deliver services across the county. The other piece is really a financial liability, and again, this is spelled out in the document, so I'll be very brief. A lot of our operations in some of our more key departments that you're all familiar with, if you think about the sheriff's office, our highway department, our social services department, solid waste, and I could go on. They have requirements relative to staffing. If those individuals with those significant balances are in a position where they need to reduce those, it's not simply the service level that's impacted. For example, in the sheriff's office, if we have corrections staff that seek to utilize that leave that they've accrued, rightfully accrued, we need to maintain certain staffing levels within the jail. So we'll need to call people in, and that could potentially lead to, if we're unable to manage that through simple scheduling, to compensation time, comp time being accrued at 1.5 hours per hour worked, or overtime. the normal parlance. So it's a significant potential impact on the organization. The request, other than that, is relatively straightforward. Based on our initial costing estimates, we're thinking it's going to come in approximately $435,000 to $450,000. I put forth some criteria, eligibility criteria for staff, namely that you need to have a balance of 75% of our pre-pandemic levels. So I don't want individuals to be in a position where they might otherwise reduce their leave balances to a point that is too low, because people should have a healthy leave balance to manage the everyday aspects of life. At the same time, I don't want to have individuals, I want individuals to make a really informed decision. This is a voluntary program. I'm not forcing anyone to participate, but with that, I don't want to belabor the point. It's a rather lengthy explanation within the document, so I'd be happy to answer any additional questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. Is there any questions by the board? Again, this was also,
Supervisor Pizzuto.
this was reviewed by the HR Finance Committee and fully supported by and approved unanimously by the HR Department. Supervisor Pizzuto, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Gibbs. This is a lot of information, and it's pretty complicated, so I just want to make sure I'm understanding it correctly. So it sounds to me like county employees have not been using their PTO balances, so now there's a big pool of all this paid time off that's unused, and this is a proposal to buy that back so that people aren't taking all of this leave all at one time, which would affect services. Is that a correct understanding?
I think that's a very succinct way to put it. Yes. I wouldn't characterize the one thing I'll say is I wouldn't characterize that people haven't been taking their leave. People have been taking leave. When they are able to do so, I will say certainly we encourage a good life-work balance at the county. I will say, in addition to, as I put forth in the request, there was, if everyone recalls back to the early portions of the pandemic, which we look back on so fondly, there were limitations that were outside of the county's control that were put in place relative to travel. The second part is, based on the number of people that have been out at various times, based on illness or quarantine, we have not been able to be in a position to approve every leave request. And we've had some departments that simply have had increased work. The health department is the best example of that. But your recitation, Supervisor Pizzuto, is a fair statement.
Other questions?
Thanks, Administrator Leader.
Thank you. Any other questions by the board? Supervisor Gomes.
My question is, if they were forced out with quarantine, are they forced to use their PTO?
There were periods, and I can get you additional information as to when our policy changes took place, but there were periods during the pandemic where other leave was available to individuals where they did not have to use the county's accrued PTO. But I can get additional information on that for you, Supervisor. I don't have that off the top of my head, but I know there were times when there were federal programs that related to leave that were in place. Those are no longer in place. We do, if someone is out, they are asked to use their leave. Or if they can work remotely, they certainly can do that.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Administrator. And we will move on to item 9D3, Public Safety Committee, establishing an intergovernmental agreement with municipalities for assessment of addressing, Resolution 06-22. Any questions? Supervisor Pfifferich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As somebody that has gone through the process of requesting an address from the municipal side to the county, I'm just interested to know how the $50 fee per address was set. Just based on my perception of the effort involved by county, that seems to be on the higher end. But just interested to know how that was set up.
I would entertain Lori. We have Mr. Mack. Mr. Mack, are you there? You're still on mute, Mr. Mack. We can't hear you. And your video seems to be frozen. Your broadband speed is not fast enough. There we, now go ahead and speak. I can see you. What? David, why don't you try to turn off your video and just use your audio? The buffering seems to be too long. And we still cannot hear you.
If we get an answer on Tuesday, that's fine for me.
Okay, we will provide the answer for that on Tuesday. Any other questions on that intergovernmental agreement? Supervisor Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Why did this come up all of a sudden? I guess years ago when we did this, I just assumed that any town or village or city could just opt in on this. Is there somebody that wants to come in and get readdressed?
No, my understanding is this, is that municipalities, villages, cities are utilizing the department to get addressing, and our department is the best suited to be able to lay out addressing for municipalities. So it's not the townships, this is the municipalities, the cities and villages. And so this is setting up to recover some of the fees or the costs that are incurred by the department to assist these municipalities in assigning addresses.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion, any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to, from the Executive Committee on Human Resources, Finance and Property Committee. Item 9D, 4A, authorizing participation in the Uniquely Wisconsin Tourism Campaign and amending the 2022 budget. Resolution 07-22. Any questions? Supervisor Robinson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to point out that you just recently received the Wisconsin Counties magazine, and included in there was a one-page feature on this campaign that's trying to help the tourism, travel, and hospitality industries that's been negatively impacted by the COVID. So this is an effort to try to promote tourism, to bring back some of those people that will ultimately benefit us through increased sales tax and other things. But it's targeted at an industry that was uniquely hurt through the pandemic.
Okay, any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 9D, 4B, authorizing the administrator to negotiate a lease with the space within the Community Partners Campus, Resolution 08-22, as you heard earlier from Mr. Noel and the other gentleman. So this is looking for approval to negotiate that lease with those individuals, or with the Community Partners Campus. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item 10, announcements and/or requests. If anybody that is here, if they could please check your mailboxes in the clerk's office. There may be some mail in your mailbox. The administrator had one announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two announcements, actually. I'll be very brief. The appointments currently within the agenda, you will have some additional appointments. We have several current members of the North Central Healthcare Programs Board that their terms are ending, and I have received notice that several of those individuals are interested in continuing to serve. So I'll bring those to you on Tuesday. If you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. And then the last announcement, in addition to if you wish to speak to me regarding the work plan, please feel free to reach out. But lastly, we are working based on comments from several board members in the past to create a more robust orientation program for not only new supervisors, but all supervisors moving forward, working with Chair Gibbs on that. If you have any thoughts on what would be helpful to include in that curriculum, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Thank you.
Okay, any other announcements and/or requests? Vice Chair McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to remind the entire board that Rules Review will be meeting again this next Tuesday, the 25th at 9 o'clock here. And everyone's welcome to attend the meeting. And if you do have any items you'd like for us to discuss, let me know, because hopefully we're going to be finishing up the rules probably in the next couple meetings. So thank you.
Okay, any other announcements and requests? Seeing none, we are down to number 11. What is your pleasure? Motion by Supervisor Christensen, a second by Supervisor Drabek to adjourn. Any discussion? All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. We stand adjourned.